the resume analyzer we have works very similar to the interview tool.
Right.
You take that job posting, put it into the system, put in the client's resume, and see, how well does that resume match this job?
Interesting.
And it's sort of like getting a look behind an ATS system because you can see how well it matches.
Welcome everyone to the Hub and Path podcast, where we sort out the who's, what's, and best practices of employment services and client interaction. I am your host, Kevin Westwood, and today I'm joined by Imran Mouna from InStage. InStage for Employment Centers is an online AI tool that employment professionals can use to get automated feedback for interviews, presentations, and sales skills delivered via any computer. This was an interesting conversation where we dig into how this tool can be used by us as employment services professionals. As always, thank you for your time and attention, and enjoy. Thank you so much for coming in, first of all.
Thank you for inviting me, Kevin. This is nice to be on a set and in person. It's a really nice change of pace.
Wonderful. So I want to start off just by learning a little bit about you, and then learning as much as I can about InStage. I mean, a lot of really cool stuff there. From the brief skimming that I've been doing, it's looking pretty cool. So let's start off. You have a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering, and now you're in the career space. How did that happen?
That's a good question. I was always excited by the idea of being in the tech space. Mm-hmm. And so I pursued a degree in engineering just out of interest in that world and really in building things. I grew up excited to build things and kind of make ideas come to life. And so mechanical engineering was sort of a way to try to explore that side of things. But I've also always been interested in the arts. So in theater and television and film. And so while I did my degree, I was actually in a number of plays and commercials and that type of thing. And so I've always been looking for ways to blend those worlds. And when I graduated, I had worked at an engineering firm while I was in school. So I kind of knew what that line of work was like. And I was starting to branch out and try to figure out, what else is out there. And I stumbled across an ad actually for a startup that was looking to develop technology to help people learn how to public speak.
Right.
And it struck me as a really interesting overlap of the skills I had because, through my degree, I did get some exposure to software development, and I actually loved it so much more than doing a finite element analysis and CAD design. So I saw this as a really unique chance to build something for another skill set that I found really exciting. And it's been a snowball effect since then. That's really where InStage started. I built the first prototype for the company and went on to pitch the idea and talk about it at competitions, conferences, events. And as we introduced this tool to people, we started to recognize where it could be most valuable. And early on, it was described as a tool for public speaking, but it quickly became something that we recognized could help people practice for interviews.
Wow.
And so here we are today, really focusing on that area and using that core technology to create a safe place for people to practice answering interview questions instead of just give presentations.
Wow. So that's the connection there, is that you're able to kind of dive into the software and the AI side. Now, and you started there, 8 years ago now?
Or was close it more to that, yeah. We must have got started in early 2017 and may have had some conversations before that, but I'd say it's been about 7 years now, yeah.
Wow. And that's early in the, kind of an early adoption of the AI technology. We're just hearing about all the ChatGPT and all that sort of stuff happening now. And there's a lot of questions about that as it relates to the, career services and everything. So,
yeah, I mean, when we first started InStage, AI was really, AI that was accessible to us. I'm sure behind the scenes, AI was doing some crazy stuff. But the only sort of thing we had access to was early versions of Watson, so IBM's AI software, which is kind of well known for playing chess. But at that point, it was doing kind of early speech to text. And so that was the big breakthrough at the time, was that we could take something someone was saying and put it in text form. And I know that doesn't sound breakthrough now, but at the time it was extremely useful for us to turn someone's presentation into a transcript and then analyze it and give them feedback. Right. So that was what we initially adopted AI for.
Wow. Okay. So there's just so much there. I'm so when you're diving into or at least you're starting to dive into using it for things like interviews and all that sort of stuff. So just so you know, our audience is mostly going to be employment professionals, right? So I'm sure a lot of us listening are going to be very interested into what exactly that looks like. Is it going to save me time, or is it going to be another thing I have to do? What does that look like?
It's been a common concern since we introduced this software to the very first career service center we brought it to. And the initial concern was, well, we already do mock interviews. We already do resume analysis. Why do we need this? And I heard a great example the other day that kind of helps paint a picture of what this tool can do. And I think it's when we went from standard cars to automatic cars. And initially there was, first of all, a concern that a car could be automatic, because even today I find it quite impressive that a car can hill balance itself. I learned to drive standard. And so whenever I'm on a hill, I'm always waiting for something to happen. But eventually people recognize that, oh, wow, automatic cars are easier. And now we don't have to worry about certain things. And so a drive's a little more relaxing. And that's kind of the way I see this software playing a similar role in career services. As people use it more often, I think they're starting to trust it more and recognize that the feedback it provides is helpful, is in line with the feedback they want their clients to get, and does offer a resource that extends their services. So we were talking about this in the first part of the episode, that caseloads are exploding. Yes. I was talking to a center this morning. They had a target of 500 clients this fiscal year, and they've already served 400, and it's been a few months.
Yeah.
And so where is that extra manpower coming from? Everyone's already maxed out. I've spoken to so many frontline workers and so many managers that are already at, their limit for how much they can do.
Yeah.
And so what we're trying to do is now bring in a tool that can extend their ability to help people, especially when they need it. So as an example, if a client comes to you today and says, I have an interview tomorrow, and you're getting that email at 3 p.m.
Yeah.
I think previously we would have had to unfortunately tell them there's not a lot we can do.
Yeah.
Whereas now what we can do is give them access to a software, like InStage or there are other tools that are great too, and still provide a very high level of service. And that's where I think we can leverage AI. I think that's what it looks like, is it can help where we can't, and maybe also where we don't want to. There are times where I think AI can help with the low-hanging fruit. Everyone has to practice answering an interview question like, tell me about yourself.
Yeah.
But for a lot of the caseworkers that I know, they have significantly more valuable things that they can be doing than help people answer that initial question. And not that they have to. I mean, in some cases, it's great to practice that with a client. But many times, if a client can come to them with that prepared and they can tweak it, we've saved that initial interaction and they can move on to a deeper conversation. So that's where I think this tool is going to start playing a role, is really as an assistant that a lot of people may not have previously had.
And that's a a common question we get in employment counseling is, how do I beat the ATS? How do I beat the applicant tracking system? And usually, and it's, I'm very curious about this because one of the things that I've noticed, like people do things in order to kind of skirt the ATS system. So for example, people will post the entirety of the job description in white in 1-point font at the bottom of their resume, knowing that the applicant tracking system is looking for keywords, and so it's going to hit every single keyword. Now, I'm wondering if they do something in order to kind of block that. So people have done like crazy stuff like that. Generally, what I recommend is to look at the qualifications, the things that the job description indicates as a qualified candidate, and make sure that those things, if you have them, are somewhere located on your resume, ideally nested within the experience section. And if it's not nested within the experience section, then put it within the kind of qualification summary, because you're indicating, if you're using your words right, what constitutes a qualified candidate, right? So how does it account for, does your system account for the white one font text at the bottom of a resume, and what's going on with all that?
It's funny you bring up that example, because years ago we were supporting an employer that had that happen to them, and they actually hired that person without realizing that's what they had done. And it wasn't until they were on the job that it became pretty obvious.
Right.
And so we heard about that example kind of long before we could help job seekers. So it's never been our intention to do that, because we've kind of seen the firsthand damage that causes. That person, of course, was let go. They couldn't retain that job. They didn't have the skills. It wasn't in anyone's best interest to try to manipulate the ATS. But what I do think is a shame is that there are some extremely talented job seekers out there who are so close to getting an interview opportunity, but all they hear is yes, no, or nothing. And if the ATS system, I was speaking to a recruiter recently, is set to look for an 88% match,
right?
And they're all different, right? They all have different thresholds and setups, but for ease of explanation. If someone comes in with 87, they don't know that. Right? They just hear no, or they just didn't get the job. And so what we're trying to do is make it a little bit easier for them to recognize what might be missing and where they might have missed highlighting a skill. So it's I would say the focus for us is on just pulling out as much of their transferable skill as we can. And so that's the way the system works, is when it analyzes their resume, it cross-references the job posting and says, okay, you have described yourself as, an ambitious software developer, but this position is for a front-end developer.
Right.
So can you describe yourself as an ambitious front-end developer? And if you can, then great. It makes that recommendation and then leaves it in the hands of the employment specialist and client to make a decision on whether they can represent the client that way.
Right.
So that's kind of where the focus is for us, is we can highlight, hey, this is what's missing. This is probably what they're looking for. And if you can say those things about yourself, then you should. And one example from another center we worked with recently is there was a very frustrated client who used the system and saw that, they hadn't been getting job interview opportunities for a few months. This one employment specialist put their resume into the system, saw that it was a 13% match, and asked her, well, do you have this skill? Yes, I do. Okay, why is it on the resume? Well, do you have that skill? Oh, yeah. Okay, well, it should be on here. And they eventually got it up to an 80+ match.
Right.
The next job she applied for, she not only got the interview, but the job.
Right.
That's what we're trying to do.
Yeah, and the tailoring of the resume is critical. in this business because, and it's funny because the employers are out there and they're saying, this is what I want. And people aren't putting that forward. A lot of people just say, apply now on Indeed or whatever else, right? And I usually recommend attempting to kind of skirt that sort of stuff by, act like I was saying in your section is connecting with the employer, connecting with people in your field, effective use of LinkedIn. I have people come into me and say, how do I use LinkedIn? And they're not currently working. And it's like, okay, well, you use LinkedIn by having used it 5 years ago because it's not going to be of any use to you right now. And generally, as people are getting work again, I say, now is the time to start to build it up. It's much like a vehicle, right? Where if you do regular maintenance of it, then it's actually going to be useful for you 5 years from now if you're out looking for work. But if you don't do regular maintenance, well, when you go to use it, the battery is going to be dead. You're not going to be able to use it. So that's really cool. That's really cool that it's kind of picking up on those keywords and everything. Now, so resume, interview, are there other things going on at InStage?
I mean, especially within the education space, there are other popular tools, one of them being sales training.
Okay.
So instead of talking to this character as if they're an interviewer, they're a customer.
Uh-huh.
And you're pitching a product or service and practicing that interaction. And in that same vein of interaction, we have business pitches. So a lot of what we've also worked on with the schools is giving entrepreneurial students a place to practice talking about their business ideas. And the cool thing with how AI works now is that it can listen to what they're saying and ask them questions no one's thought of.
Right.
And initially, we would have to anticipate those questions and write them ahead of time. Whereas now, an example, I heard someone pitch an idea for a vending machine for flowers that could be in the airport. So that, there's flowers when you greet people. And I thought it was an amazing idea.
Smart.
And that's kind of all I said. I was like, that's a great idea. But the system said, well, how are you going to keep those flowers fresh? And how are you going to keep them, alive in the vending machine? And I thought, wow.
Without
that's
mold.
Exactly. I just thought that's amazing. That's the kind of opportunity it can give students is to practice for these, again, questions they might get asked in whatever conversational context they're in. And then the newest tool that we're working on now is around reflection. So for a lot of students, they'll go out onto kind of like what we spoke about earlier, these workplace opportunities or apprenticeships, and they'll be asked to write about their experience. Mm-hmm. And some people like writing, but a lot of people, it's not the format they can best express themselves.
Right.
So instead now it's, can you have a conversation with one of these characters who will probe and dig deeper and try to figure out what you learned and help you set goals. And so there are certainly other applications of InStage, not as widely used in an employment service context, but it's interesting to see where people would like to apply the core technology.
Wow. Yeah, like I do a lot of journaling personally, and the idea of, because sometimes you just don't know what to write about, but the idea of somebody kind of prompting you and asking you questions and you can have a conversation, that's really cool.
And the latest sort of addition to that is this concept of memory within the AI. So if you do that this week and you say, well, the AI will ask you, what do you want to do next week?
Right.
And you say, well, I'd like to have more people on the podcast.
Yeah.
Come next week, the AI will ask you, how did it go?
Uh-huh.
What did you do? And it retains those goals and the actions you took and creates this ongoing conversation. And it's very interesting to see how powerful that can be.
Yeah.
So
well, that's what I love that. So I use ChatGPT frequently, and one of the things that you can do is you can go into the back end of it and say, I'm a career services consultant. I'm in Southern Ontario, and put all these kind of background information so that when you're asking it a question, it's putting it in connection with the type of work and everything that you do, and then providing an answer that potentially has context related to your actual work, which is incredible.
That's a great way to use it. Yeah, that's a great example.
Yeah. Wow. Now you're a busy person. You run. I've at least seen a couple of different podcasts. The one I think you were kind of alluding to a little bit here, I think it's called Sell My Pen or Sell Me This Pen. And
that's right. Yeah.
And then you have another one where you're connecting with career and employment professionals. And you've interviewed over 50 at this point.
That's right. Yeah.
Wow. So what I want to take a little bit of time here because you having interviewed so many career professionals, I'm betting that you have one or two insights. Let's assume for a minute that you're talking with a whole bunch of career professionals. What insights might you have for them in the work that they're doing? Let's start off generally, and then maybe we can tie in the AI piece and like how can they best utilize that sort of stuff in their work?
Well, the first thing I've definitely come to realize after having spoken to this group of people is just how vast the scope of your work is. So I try to start most of our interactions just by thanking them because this is not easy work to do. And my initial understanding of this role was very limited, and I think that's just because I hadn't spoken to enough people before. I thought this is a group of people that help with resumes and cover letters. And it's actually a group of people that will help, individuals go through transitioning from roles, being, newcomers to the country, dealing with outplacement, going through mental health concerns, adapting to a new community. It's such a vast role. So that's one thing I've just come to recognize is how important this work is. Because on the other side of a job is also the ability to support your family, to, plan for your goals and dreams. And it's just so far beyond finding a job that this work impacts. So that's one thing I've come to recognize. In terms of kind of the second part of your question about how to best leverage AI, I've heard this really great way to frame AI recently, and it's to actually allow you to do the more human aspects of your job. So I know there's concern around, what AI is going to take the role, of many people. What role will it take on? And I like this concept that we don't want AI to come in and paint the pictures and make the movies so we can do the laundry. We want it to do the tasks that maybe we don't enjoy so we can do the things we do enjoy. And I think in a career service context, from what I have seen, this is a group of people that enjoys talking to people and supporting people. And maybe part of the work that can stand in the way of that is having to document some of that process, write out specific feedback, provide reports, do research on the questions that you need to ask someone who might be interviewing for a job in a field you're not from, because the roles can be so vast.
Yeah.
That's an interesting place to leverage AI. AI can come up with the questions that a civil engineer needs to know.
Right.
AI systems can come up with the specific feedback a person needs to hear. It can't make a person feel supported. It can't play that human role of just sitting across from someone and hearing, "Hey, it's okay."
Yeah,
that's true. I shouldn't say it can't, but that's I think that role, it's encouraging to have a human that does that with you. And I think that, yeah, you're right. AI can definitely do a lot, and it will be interesting to see how it evolves. But if that's the aspect of your career you enjoy, and there are people looking for a human connection, I think that's what you can do more of if you leverage AI the right way.
Right. Yeah, it's and well, I mean, one of the things that I really like about at least what I've heard about InStage is uh not to get economical about it, but you've actually monetized the use of it, and I think that's really incredibly important in the kind of um, within artificial intelligence. And the reason why I say that is because a lot of people are kind of looking at all of the stuff that's happening with artificial intelligence and comparing it to the dot-com bubble that happened, and they're saying, a lot of people aren't monetizing it, and they're bringing in all this debt with no actual way to make money, and then that's when you get a bubble that ends up bursting. So I really like the fact that you've kind of developed this in a way, or you and your team have developed this in a way that is actually sellable and useful to, educational institutions and government services and employment services and things like that. So that's no small task.
Well, I appreciate that, and a lot of that credit certainly goes to our founding team, and specifically my co-founder, Michael Cayley. He has a real sense of business around those things. And funny enough, that sense of business is driven by, I think, something we spoke about early on in your kind of flip side interview, where I got to know you a bit better, Kevin. And it was, is there something we can help with? Is there a need out there that we can serve? And if there is, are people willing to pay for that support? Not to exploit it, but just, because it costs something to help in that way. And when you find that balance between there's a need for something and a willingness to pay for support, you can do something sustainable there. And he's kind of guided the company through discovering that and finding the way to make it work. So I appreciate you saying that, and I can't take the credit for it, but I think it's what's made InStage stick around for as long as it has.
Yeah. So, and I'm thinking about a lot of things that you said there now, because in terms of one of the largest burdens that is across the board when it comes to the service provider network here is the administrative one. And it's tough because we want to get back to that, one-to-one support and connecting and all that sort of stuff, and then you're having to basically do it all again by writing it out. But the idea that, somebody's going to do a mock interview, you're going to get not only a transcript, but maybe even potentially a scoring thing, or the resume, and you get a scoring thing based on that. And I would take a 30 to 45 minute appointment to teach the skills required to properly tailor a resume, and then have to do the administrative side on top of that. So I see the benefit, I see the use. That it's not a question, but it's really cool.
Well, I'm glad to hear that, because that is something I have heard from this group of people, and it is quite simple to understand when you hear it, from their perspective. And it's this concept that if someone is talking to you about what they're interested in and the job they want and why they're qualified, and in the back of your mind, you have to mentally take notes and start preparing your feedback, you just can't be as present.
Yeah.
And it's the same in any conversation. So the fact that, yes, we can leverage an AI system it's a little like they get to do the interview and then tell you how it went more often.
Yeah.
And instead of being the person who has to portray the interviewer now, to someone who has gotten to know you and has gotten comfortable with you, it's kind of you and them versus the interview.
Yeah.
So you get to kind of take this bird's eye view and see and have a conversation around, how did it go? What questions were tough?
Yeah.
Opposed to having be the one ask those questions and then you switch roles. So
well, yeah, and I used to pair off with other caseworkers that I'm working with so that they would do the interview since they don't know them, because getting interviewed by somebody is not as useful, I think, for sure. Would you say that there are any, at least currently, any limitations to this software right now?
Limitations.
So, for example, with the interviewing, does it look at their camera? Does it see if their eyes are closed? Does it see if they're looking into the camera, or if they're kind of like off looking somewhere else, or if maybe there's hygiene issues or something along that line?
Yeah, that's a perfect example. We don't do a video analysis yet. We have beta tested what can be done to give people insights on their background, their attire, actions they might be doing that they don't recognize are distracting. Especially some students will, yawn and stretch, and they're not really paying attention to some of the formality that might be expected of them in an interview, just because they don't know yet, and that's all right. But the system can't do that sort of it can't provide feedback on that type of thing yet, so it's something we're looking into. The other area is, it's just under constant development. So I would say even on the resume side of things, it's taken great strides over the summer based on the feedback from the employment specialists we're working with.
Yeah.
And so at the start of the summer, its feedback was specific to the job, but it's taken a leap in terms of the type of feedback it provides and the type of instruction it provides, because now that we've been able to collect feedback from the people on the ground using it, we can continue to improve it. So I expect there to be things that people, as they get more comfortable with using it, that they'll point out things that I wish it could do this or that. And again, it's kind of a tenet of InStage to pay attention to that.
Right.
And something is, again, that I've learned from Michael on our team. I had this idea as an engineer that we would build this perfect product and then present it to the world. And one of the great lessons of being part of InStage has been that you put something out there and start listening to what people say about it.
Right.
So I would certainly say there's probably many more limitations than I'm even aware of, but we are listening for what they are and trying to adapt to them.
That's great. Okay, so I think we've covered a lot. Is there anything that I haven't brought up that you really wanted to talk about?
I think just that it's exciting for us to hear feedback from the people who are using this more often. I love hearing stories that someone has gotten a job because they have become more confident, or that someone has gotten a job because they have highlighted skills they weren't previously showcasing.
Yep.
So I think that's just worth mentioning, not just because I'm proud InStage has played a role in that, but because it just goes to show you the kind of work this group of people are doing. So I love hearing that. I love being part of that.
Wonderful. Is there anything that you want to kind of say to the service provider network while you got them here now? You don't have to, but
no, absolutely. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this today, and thank you for doing the work you do. Again, I truly mean it. This is significant work, and it's not easy work. And so I'm happy that we have been able to help some of you make it a little easier. And I'm here anytime to ask questions. We are trying to design this for you, the people using it. So if you have insights, if you have concerns, feedback, questions, we are extremely interested in hearing those things. And if you're excited about it and have a success story, we love hearing that too. So please reach out anytime. I'm always available for that.
Wonderful. Well, thanks for coming in, and we'll catch you all next time.
All right.